Have you ever heard of a teenager who left everything behind to join a terrorist group, only to find herself stateless and trapped in a refugee camp years later? This is the story of Shamima Begum, a name that has sparked intense debate across the world. It's a complex and tragic tale about youth, radicalization, citizenship, and national security. Today, we're going to unravel the timeline of her life. From a schoolgirl in London to her current status in a Syrian detention camp. Shamima Begum was born on August 25, 1999, in London, England, to parents of Bangladeshi origin. She was a British citizen by birth and spent her entire childhood in East London, attending Bethnal Green Academy. For the first 15 years of her life, she was just like any other teenager growing up in the UK. But in February 2015, everything changed. At just 15 years old, she and two of her school friends, Khadija, Sultana, and Amira Abbas, made a secret and fateful journey. They left their homes, their families, and their country behind, traveling through Turkey and crossing the border into Syria. Their destination was the territory controlled by the so-called Islamic State, or IS, which at that time was at the peak of its power and influence. Why would three teenage girls do something so drastic? Investigations later revealed they had been radicalized online, lured by IS propaganda that promised them a role in building a new caliphate. Once they arrived in Syria, life moved at a terrifying pace. Within about 10 days, Shamima was married off to Jago Ridej, a Dutch convert who had also joined the militant group. For the next few years, she lived under the brutal rule of IS. During this time, she gave birth to 3 children. Tragically, all 3 of them died in infancy. The harsh realities of life in a war zone, with its lack of food, clean water, and proper medical care, were devastating. Her first 2 children succumbed to illness and malnutrition. By early 2019, the so-called caliphate was collapsing under intense military pressure from an international coalition. As IS territory shrank, its members, including Shamima and her husband, were forced to flee. It was during this chaotic period that Shamima was discovered by a British journalist. She was found in the Al-Hol refugee camp in northeast Syria, a sprawling and desperate place run by Kurdish forces. She was 9 months pregnant with her 3rd child and expressed a clear desire to return to the UK. She believed she could come home, face whatever consequences awaited her, and raise her baby in safety. But her story, now broadcast across the world, triggered a fierce political and public firestorm back in Britain. Shortly after she was found, the UK's Home Secretary at the time made a monumental decision. Shamima Begum's British citizenship was revoked. The government's justification was based on national security grounds, arguing that she posed a potential threat. They also claimed that she would be left stateless because she was eligible for Bangladeshi citizenship through her parents. This move was legally controversial but powerful. For Shamima, the consequences were immediate and catastrophic. Her 3rd child was born in the camp, but, like his siblings, died just a few weeks later from pneumonia. And then came another blow. The government of Bangladesh publicly announced that Shamima Begum was not a Bangladeshi citizen and would not be allowed to enter their country. Suddenly, at the age of 19, she was officially stateless, stranded in a Syrian camp with no country to call her own. This set the stage for a long and complex legal battle. Shamima's lawyers immediately appealed the decision to revoke her citizenship. Their arguments were powerful. They contended that she was a child when she left the UK, a victim of grooming and trafficking by sophisticated recruiters. They argued that she had been manipulated and could not be held fully responsible for the decisions she made as a female. Furthermore, they insisted that she had a right to a fair hearing, something she could only get if she were allowed to return to the UK to present her case in person. The case slowly made its way through the British legal system. There were moments when it seemed like she might win. At one point, the Court of Appeal ruled that she should be allowed to return to the UK to fairly challenge the government's decision. However, the government fought back, taking the case all the way to the UK's highest court, the Supreme Court. In a landmark ruling, the Supreme Court sided with the government. They concluded that the Home Secretary's decision to remove her citizenship was lawful. The court prioritized national security concerns, stating that the government was not obligated to facilitate her return to the UK, even if it made her appeal more difficult. This decision effectively shut the door on her return and exhausted her primary legal options in the UK. So, where does that leave Shamima Begum today? Since 2019, she has remained in northeast Syria, moved between detention camps like Al-Hol and Al-Raj. These camps hold thousands of women and children who were once linked to IS. The conditions are notoriously harsh. There's limited access to food, healthcare, and education. Freedom of movement is non-existent. These are not just refugee camps. They are de facto open-air prisons. Throughout her time there, Shamima has given several interviews to the media. Her narrative has shifted over the years. Initially, she seemed unrepentant, which shocked many people. But in more recent interviews, she has expressed deep regret for joining IS. She has said that she was young, naive, and groomed online. She has pleaded for a second chance, asking for forgiveness and the opportunity to come home. The UK government, however, has remained firm in its position. They maintain that she represents a security risk and have consistently refused to repatriate her. This stance is part of a broader policy where the UK has been reluctant to bring back its citizens who joined IS, unlike some other European nations. No other country has stepped forward to take responsibility for her. Bangladesh continues to deny her any claim to citizenship, and the Syrian Kurdish authorities who run the camps have not put her on trial. They lack the resources and legal framework to prosecute the thousands of foreign nationals they hold. They have repeatedly called on Western countries to take their citizens back, but the UK has not budged in Shamima's case. Internationally, human rights organizations and the United Nations have urged countries to repatriate their citizens, especially women and children, from these Syrian camps. They argue that leaving them in indefinite detention without charge or trial violates international law and creates a humanitarian crisis. They also warn that these camps could become breeding grounds for the next generation of extremists. But for governments like the UK, the political and security risks of repatriation are seen as too high. The public remains deeply divided on the issue. Some see her as a victim who deserves compassion and a chance at rehabilitation. Others view her as a traitor who willingly joined a brutal terrorist organization and should not be allowed to return. As of now, heading into 2025, Shamima Begum remains in a detention camp in Syria. She is stateless, with no clear path to release or repatriation. Her legal battles in the UK appear to be over, and she exists in a state of limbo, without the rights or recognition of any government. Her story serves as a stark and cautionary tale about the devastating consequences of online radicalization and the complex moral and legal questions that societies face in the modern age of terrorism. It forces us to ask difficult questions. What is the nature of citizenship? What responsibilities do we have to our own citizens, even when they make terrible choices? And where does justice lie for a person who was once a child victim, but also a willing participant in a violent ideology? Her fate remains uncertain, a symbol of a problem that the world still hasn't figured out how to solve. Thank you for watching. What are your thoughts on this complex case? Let us know in the comments below. And if you found this video informative, please give it a like and subscribe for more deep dives into the stories shaping our world.